There are 5 forbidden objects that determine who rises to power, and the first is worn by every ruler long before they ever touch a throne. It is not forged in metal, nor inherited by blood. It is learned quietly, often painfully, and almost always alone. The mask is the first separation a man must master, the distance between what he feels and what he shows, between the storm inside and the stillness he presents to the world. Those who fail to understand this never truly enter the game of power. They believe the world is moved by sincerity, by honesty, by the open display of the heart, and so they speak too freely, react too quickly, reveal too much. They announce themselves before they are ready, and the world, which watches more closely than it ever admits, takes note. A man without a mask believes his emotions are proof of his humanity. He thinks his anger commands respect, his excitement inspires loyalty, his transparency earns trust. But what it truly earns is attention of the wrong kind. The twitch of impatience on his face tells others where to press. The tightening of his jaw reveals what threatens him. The eagerness in his voice exposes his hunger. In every court, every boardroom, every circle where power circulates, there are eyes trained to read these signals. They do not listen to words, they study reactions. They wait for the moment when the unmasked man betrays himself, and then they move. Power does not need to attack openly. It simply allows the exposed to destroy themselves. History is filled with leaders undone not by enemies, but by their inability to conceal their inner state. The commander who lets fear flicker across his face before battle has already lost half his army. The ruler who cannot hide resentment invites rebellion. The negotiator who reveals desperation weakens his own position before a single term is agreed upon. These men are not defeated by superior force. They are defeated by visibility. They are too readable in a world where being understood is a liability. The mask exists to prevent this. Not to lie unnecessarily, but to control what is revealed and when, to decide which truths serve you now and which must remain hidden until their time. There is a cruel lesson most people resist learning. Human beings do not trust intentions. They trust appearances. They follow what looks calm, what feels stable, what seems familiar and safe. They do not pledge loyalty to the man who burns with intensity. They follow the one who appears unshaken by chaos. The mask exploits this flaw not out of malice, but out of realism. A man who understands power understands that perception is the gateway through which all influence passes. Before others will obey you, they must feel at ease around you. Before they feel at ease, they must believe they understand you. The mask gives them that illusion, while preserving your freedom to act beyond it. Many mistake the mask for hypocrisy. They imagine it as constant deception, as living a lie. This is the naivete of those who have never been hunted. The mask is not worn to harm the innocent, but to survive among predators. It is camouflage in a hostile environment. It allows a man to move through danger without drawing attention, to listen while others speak, to observe while others perform. It grants him the advantage of being underestimated, and underestimation is one of the most powerful weapons available. The world rarely guards against what it believes it already understands. The mask ensures you are never fully understood. The ambitious man who reveals himself too early always believes his brilliance will protect him. He announces his plans, his confidence, his hunger for more. He thinks visibility equals momentum. But power does not reward eagerness, it punishes it. The moment others sense your trajectory, they begin calculating how to divert it, slow it, or end it. The mask delays this response. It keeps your intentions opaque, your direction uncertain. While others debate who you are and what you want, you are already moving. While they interpret your silence as weakness or indecision, you are gathering leverage. The mask buys time, and time is the most valuable currency in any struggle for dominance. Power begins the instant a man accepts a difficult truth. The world does not reward authenticity, it rewards control over perception. The man who refuses this lesson is naked in a world of predators. Every emotion he displays becomes a handle for others to grab. Every reaction becomes a map to his vulnerabilities. The mask seals these openings. It allows a man to appear calm while calculating, loyal while advancing, harmless while preparing to strike. Not because he is cruel, but because he understands the terrain he is walking through. In a world governed by appearances, invisibility is strength, and yet the mask is only the beginning. It governs how you are seen, how you pass unnoticed, how you survive the early stages of ascent. But there is a second object, far more dangerous, far more intoxicating, because it does not merely shape perception, it governs obedience itself. It determines why others follow without questioning, why they submit without force, and why resistance dissolves before it ever forms. That object is the crown, and once it enters the picture, the cost of power becomes impossible to ignore. The crown is not placed upon the head, it settles quietly in the minds of others, long before they realize they are bowing. Unlike the mask, which conceals intention, the crown shapes belief. It answers a far more dangerous question, not who you are, but why others obey you without being commanded. The crown is authority made invisible. It is the psychological weight that causes men to defer, to hesitate, to seek permission, even when none is required. Those who misunderstand it believe power comes from titles, positions, or declarations. They announce leadership and expect allegiance. But true dominion emerges when others assume you lead before you ever say a word. The crown forms through consistency of posture, certainty of decision, and the quiet refusal to explain oneself unnecessarily. People instinctively look for hierarchy. In moments of uncertainty, they search the room for the figure who appears least affected, least rushed, least desperate to be liked. The crown belongs to the one who seems already chosen. When a man acts as though he expects obedience, others feel an unconscious pressure to comply. They may resent it, question it privately, even deny it aloud, yet they still adjust their behavior around him. This is not respect born of virtue, it is submission born of psychological gravity. The greatest mistake made by those who crave authority is the need to justify it. They over-explain decisions, plead their case, invite consensus where none is required. In doing so, they teach others that power is negotiable. The crown rejects negotiation. It does not ask, it assumes. A man wearing the crown does not rush to fill silence. He allows discomfort to linger until others move to relieve it. He does not chase approval because pursuit signals lack. Instead, he occupies space as though it already belongs to him, and the room rearranges itself accordingly. There are leaders who lose everything the moment they attempt to be loved. Love demands vulnerability, equality, reassurance. Authority demands distance. The crown cannot survive emotional exposure. The moment a ruler seeks validation, the illusion collapses. Those beneath him sense the shift immediately. They test boundaries. They challenge decisions. They smell weakness where certainty once stood. Power does not fall in dramatic coups most of the time. It erodes quietly, as the crown slips from the collective imagination of those who once upheld it. Understand this clearly. Obedience is rarely forced. It is volunteered. People obey because it simplifies their world, because surrendering responsibility feels safer than carrying it. The crown offers that relief. It presents a figure who appears capable of bearing consequence, blame, and decision. When men believe you can withstand pressure, they place it on your shoulders willingly. When they believe you cannot, they remove you without remorse. This is why authority is less about dominance and more about perception of inevitability. The crown convinces others that resistance is futile before resistance is even considered. Many rulers fall because they confuse possession of power with permanence of power. They believe once the crown is earned, it cannot be taken. But the crown exists only as long as others believe in it. It must be reinforced subtly, constantly, without overt displays of insecurity. Every concession, every unnecessary explanation, every emotional outburst chips away at its weight. The most dangerous moment for any ruler is not rebellion, but familiarity. When others feel comfortable questioning you openly, the crown has already begun to dissolve. Yet even the crown is not the most enduring instrument of power. It governs obedience. Yes, but obedience alone is fragile. It depends on presence, on visibility, on the continued belief that you are watching. There is a third object that outlives proximity, that binds loyalty even in absence, that marks those who belong and those who do not. It is quieter than the crown, subtler than authority itself, and once it takes hold, men will act on your behalf without ever being told to do so. That object is the sigil. The sigil is never announced. It is never explained. It is recognized. Where the crown commands obedience, the sigil creates allegiance. It answers a question far more dangerous than who leads, who belongs. The sigil is the invisible mark that separates those inside the circle from those forever outside it. It does not rely on fear or authority. but on identity. Once a man accepts the sigil, he no longer follows orders. He enforces them himself. He polices others without being asked. He defends the structure, even when the ruler is absent. This is how power multiplies without effort. Most men fail to understand why loyalty persists even after a leader falls from sight. They assume it is habit, or tradition, or blind devotion. They are wrong. Loyalty survives because of symbols, rituals, shared language, and unspoken rules that signal belonging. The sigil embeds itself into how people see themselves. It transforms obedience into pride. To betray the sigil feels like betraying oneself. And so men endure hardship, justify cruelty, and commit acts they would otherwise reject, all in service of maintaining their place within the mark. The sigil is constructed slowly. It forms through selective inclusion, through earned access, through moments where acceptance feels scarce and therefore valuable. When belonging is easy, it is meaningless. When it must be earned, defended, and protected, it becomes sacred. Those who bear the sigil feel chosen, and chosen men do not question the hand that chose them. They rationalize every command as necessary. They interpret every sacrifice as proof of worth. Power no longer needs to watch them. They watch each other. The greatest strength of the sigil is that it outlives the man who created it. Crowns fall, masks slip, but symbols endure. Flags, mottos, codes, ranks, colors. These are not decorations. They are psychological anchors. They tell men who they are when uncertainty threatens to dissolve them. Once the sigil is internalized, power becomes decentralized. Control spreads through belief rather than force. The ruler becomes an idea rather than a presence, and ideas are far harder to overthrow than men. Those excluded by the sigil feel its power most acutely. They sense doors closing without explanation. Opportunities vanish without confrontation. Influence moves around them rather than through them. They are not attacked, they are ignored. This is the cruelty of symbolic power. It does not need to destroy openly. It simply denies access. And humans will tolerate almost anything to avoid exclusion. They will submit, conform, reshape themselves, all for the chance to be marked as one of the chosen. But the sigil carries a hidden danger for the one who wields it. Once others act in your name, their actions reflect back upon you, whether you approve or not. Loyalty can mutate into fanaticism. Identity can harden into blindness. When belief becomes absolute, it stops responding to correction, and this is where power must evolve again. Because symbols alone cannot restrain what they awaken. There comes a moment when loyalty must be enforced, not inspired. That is when the fourth object reveals itself. It is not symbolic. It is not gentle. It does not persuade or include. It ends debate. It draws a line that cannot be crossed twice. And once it is introduced, everything changes. That object is the blade. The blade is the moment where illusion ends. It is not a weapon held in the hand, but a certainty held in the mind of others. Where the sigil creates loyalty, the blade enforces consequence. It answers the question no ruler can avoid forever. What happens when someone defies you? Power that cannot punish is performance. Authority that never draws blood, figuratively or otherwise, is eventually ignored. The blade exists to ensure that belief does not drift into chaos, that allegiance does not decay into convenience. Most men recoil from the blade because they mistake restraint for morality. They delay consequence, negotiate with defiance, forgive too often and too publicly. Each act of mercy teaches observers a dangerous lesson, that disobedience is survivable. The blade must be known, not used constantly. Its power lies in inevitability. Those who sense it do not need reminders. Those who doubt it must become examples. The blade is not swung in anger. Anger is wasteful. It is drawn calmly, decisively, and without explanation. That is what terrifies. The greatest failure of collapsing empires is inconsistency. Punishment applied once and ignored the next. Laws enforced selectively. Lines drawn, erased, redrawn. The blade loses its edge the moment it becomes negotiable. Power requires memory. People must remember what happens when boundaries are crossed. Fear, when disciplined, is stabilizing. It creates order where loyalty fails and symbols fracture. The blade restores gravity to the system. It reminds everyone that participation is not optional. There is a misconception that the blade creates enemies. In truth, it creates silence. Resistance thrives in ambiguity. It feeds on hesitation. The blade removes both. Once it is clear that consequences are final, opposition retreats into thought rather than action. Most men are not brave. They are opportunistic. They rebel only when they believe the cost will be low. Raise the cost high enough, and rebellion becomes philosophy instead of behavior. The blade does not eliminate dissent. It renders it inert. Yet the blade carries its own danger. Used too often, it breeds resentment. Used without precision, it turns fear into hatred. Used impulsively, it exposes insecurity. The master of power understands that the blade is not the foundation of rule, but its boundary. It is the last argument, not the first. It must appear rarely, but when it does, it must be absolute. Anything less teaches defiance. Anything more invites revolt. There comes a point where even the blade reaches its limit. Fear enforces obedience, but it cannot guide direction. It keeps men in line, but it does not tell them where to go. A system ruled only by consequence becomes rigid, brittle, waiting to shatter under pressure. For power to endure beyond control, beyond punishment, beyond presence, it requires something else entirely. There is a final object, the most dangerous of all. It does not command, include, or punish. It reshapes reality itself. It governs how people see the world, how they interpret events, how they decide what is possible and what is not. Once it is held, power no longer reacts, it defines. That object is the orb. The orb is not held by force. It is accepted without resistance. Where the blade enforces limits, the orb defines reality. It answers the final question of power, what people believe is possible, inevitable, or unchangeable. Once the orb is in place, control no longer requires commands, loyalty, or punishment. Action flows naturally in the direction you have shaped. Men do not feel ruled, they feel guided by the way things are, and that is the most complete form of dominance. Those who possess the orb understand that the greatest power is not over bodies, but over interpretation. Events do not matter nearly as much as their meaning. Suffering can be reframed as necessity. Loss can be reframed as progress. Sacrifice can be reframed as honor. When people adopt your framing, they police their own thoughts. They rationalize outcomes that harm them. They defend structures that constrain them. The orb turns circumstance into destiny, and destiny is rarely questioned. The orb is constructed through repetition, narrative, and selective truth. Not lies. Lies collapse under pressure, but emphasis. What is spoken of constantly becomes important. What is ignored becomes irrelevant. Over time, perception narrows. Possibilities shrink. Alternatives feel unrealistic, dangerous, or foolish. This is how entire populations accept conditions they would have once rejected. They are not coerced, they are conditioned. The orb does not shout. It hums quietly in the background of every decision. Those without the orb believe they are choosing freely. They debate surface details, while the deeper assumptions remain untouched. They argue over outcomes, while accepting the framework that produces them. This is why revolutions often replace one ruler with another, while leaving the structure intact. The orb survives change in leadership. It is invisible, embedded in language, tradition, expectation. Whoever controls it, controls the future without ever appearing to do so. The danger of the orb is subtle and absolute. Once reality is shaped, resistance appears irrational. Dissenters are not crushed, they are dismissed. Their ideas sound childish, extreme, or disconnected from the world as it is understood. This is power without violence. Control without confrontation. The orb does not need to be defended because it is no longer seen as an object of power at all. It becomes the air people breathe. And yet, the orb cannot exist alone. It requires the mask to move unnoticed, the crown to establish authority, the sigil to bind loyalty, the blade to enforce boundaries. Remove any one of them, and the system weakens. Together, they form a closed circuit of dominance, perception, obedience, identity, consequence, and reality itself. This is why power is never accidental. It is assembled deliberately, piece by piece, by those willing to see the world as it is, rather than as they wish it to be. Most men will reject these truths. They will call them cold, manipulative, inhuman, and in doing so, they will remain ruled by those who understand them. Power does not disappear because it is denied, it merely changes hands. The 5 forbidden objects exist whether they are named or not, and those who rise are not the most virtuous, nor the most talented, but the ones disciplined enough to wield them without illusion. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you already knows this truth. Power is never accidental. It is shaped, guarded, and transferred through symbols most people are too blind or too afraid to touch. The forbidden objects were never myths, they were filters, and only those willing to wield them rise. Now tell me in the comments, which object called to you the most? And more importantly, are you ready for what comes with holding it? If this message touched you, if it made sense, write in the comments. I understand the symbols. Let's see how many here are truly meant to rise, and how many were never meant to know. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine. See you there.